Imagine standing inside a laboratory, so quiet that you can hear the hum of your own nervous system, a place where scientists are not just observing the universe but asking a question so radical it almost sounds like science fiction. What if a universe can be created not by gods or cosmic accidents but by human hands following the laws of physics? Inside this lab, no one is smashing planets together or opening glowing portals in the air. Instead, they are working with equations, quantum fields, extreme energy densities, and a deep understanding of how reality itself behaves at its limits. This is not about playing God. It is about understanding what a universe actually is and whether the one we live in might not be as unique as we once believed. When physicists talk about creating a new universe, they are not imagining stars and galaxies popping into existence in a room. They are exploring whether the fundamental conditions that gave birth to our cosmos could, in theory, be reproduced on an unimaginably small scale, hidden from our perception, like a thought forming silently inside the brain before we ever become aware of it. This matters because the same question appears everywhere in science, neuroscience, and psychology. How does something complex emerge from something simple, and where are the true limits of creation? In neuroscience, consciousness emerges from electrochemical signals. In biology, life emerges from molecules. In cosmology, a universe emerges from energy and laws. The lab where scientists are trying to create a new universe is not just a physical space. It is a conceptual frontier where physics meets philosophy and where the human mind confronts its own boundaries. To understand this, we need to start with the idea that our universe may have begun as a tiny, unstable state, a quantum fluctuation that expanded rapidly during what we call cosmic inflation. Inflation theory suggests that space itself can grow exponentially when trapped in a high-energy state. In some models, this process never truly ends. It just keeps happening, creating bubble universes like neurons firing independently inside a vast cosmic brain. Our universe could be one such bubble. If that is true, then creating a new universe would not require assembling matter piece by piece. It would require triggering the right conditions for space-time itself to expand and detach. In the lab, this translates into experiments with extreme energy densities, theoretical constructs like false vacuum states and mathematical simulations that push physics to its edge. No current experiment can actually produce a full-fledged universe. But researchers study analog systems, quantum fields in controlled environments, and high-energy particle collisions to understand whether miniature versions of these processes are possible. The human brain is wired to resist this idea. Our perception evolved to handle survival, not cosmic creation. When we hear new universe, the brain activates threat and disbelief circuits. The amygdala reacts to the unknown. The prefrontal cortex tries to impose familiar categories. This is a stress response, similar to how the brain reacts when facing uncertainty or loss of control. But neuroscience shows us that stress is not just a weakness. It is an adaptive signal. When your brain feels overwhelmed by an idea, it is often because that idea challenges deeply ingrained mental models. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, depends on this discomfort. Just as muscles grow under tension, understanding grows under cognitive strain. The scientists in these labs are constantly operating at that edge. They are not just testing machines. They are testing the limits of human comprehension. In physics, there is a concept called the energy landscape, a map of possible states a system can occupy. Our universe sits in one valley of this landscape. Other valleys may exist, representing other possible universes with different laws. In the lab, physicists explore this landscape mathematically, asking whether transitions between valleys are possible. This mirrors how the brain explores mental landscapes. Thoughts are signals traveling through neural networks. Most of the time, they follow familiar paths. Occasionally, under stress, curiosity, or intense focus, the brain jumps to a new path. That jump feels risky, uncomfortable, even frightening. But it is also where creativity lives. The lab becomes a metaphor for the mind itself, a system probing its own limits. One of the most misunderstood aspects of this research is the fear that creating a new universe could destroy ours. This fear reveals more about human psychology than about physics. The brain is loss-averse. It overestimates catastrophic risks when facing unfamiliar scenarios. In reality, theoretical models suggest that if a new universe could form, it would likely be causally disconnected from ours, pinching off into its own space-time, like a thought that never becomes an action. The energy scales involved are so extreme that they are far beyond current technology. The real danger is not physical annihilation, but conceptual disruption. If we demonstrate that universes can be created, even in principle, it challenges the idea that our cosmos is special. This is where philosophy enters. Humans have always sought meaning in uniqueness. Neuroscience shows that our sense of identity is tied to narrative coherence. We like stories with a center. A multiverse has no center. It is cognitively unsettling. Yet this discomfort is precisely what drives scientific progress. When Copernicus displaced Earth from the center of the cosmos, it caused psychological shock. When Darwin showed that humans are part of evolution, it triggered existential anxiety. Each time the brain adapted. Each time neuroplasticity reshaped our worldview. The idea of lab-created universes could be the next such shift. There is also a deeper question hidden here. If universes can be created, what defines responsibility? In biology, creating life carries ethical weight. In neuroscience, altering brains raises moral questions. In cosmology, creating a universe would mean creating conditions for complexity, perhaps even life. But this is not imminent. What is imminent is the mental shift required to even contemplate it seriously. The brain treats limits as safety rails. When those rails move, stress increases, cortisol rises, attention narrows. Yet long-term adaptation requires exactly this process. Studies on learning show that the brain rewires most effectively when challenged just beyond its comfort zone. The lab where scientists attempt to create a new universe operates permanently in that zone. They rely on collaboration, slow reasoning, and rigorous self-correction, counteracting the brain's tendency toward overconfidence and fear. From a systems perspective, the universe, the brain, and the lab all follow similar principles. They are networks exchanging energy and information. The universe processes energy through physical laws. The brain processes signals through neurons. The lab processes hypotheses through experiments. Failure is not a flaw in these systems. It is a feedback signal. When an experiment fails, it refines the model. When a thought fails, it refines understanding. When a universe collapses in theory, it teaches us about stability. This leads to a surprising twist. What you perceive as human limitation, our inability to fully grasp or create universes, is actually a protective feature. The brain evolved to filter reality. If you were suddenly aware of all cosmic scales at once, perception would collapse. Cognitive overload would occur. Consciousness depends on constraints. Similarly, the fact that we cannot yet create universes protects us from acting without understanding consequences. Limits are not barriers. They are stabilizers. In neuroscience, inhibitory neurons prevent runaway excitation. Without them, the brain would seize. In cosmology, constraints prevent physical laws from producing chaos. The same applies to human ambition. The frustration scientists feel when models fail is not weakness. It is the system preventing collapse. The lab becomes a training ground for humility. Over time, this humility reshapes perception. Researchers stop asking, "Can we do this?" and start asking, "What does this teach us about reality?" That shift mirrors psychological maturity. Early cognition seeks control. Advanced cognition seeks coherence. Even if a new universe is never created, the attempt transforms our understanding of the one we inhabit. It reframes existence as a process rather than a product. The universe is not a finished object. It is an ongoing computation. This idea resonates with modern neuroscience, which views the brain not as a static structure, but as a dynamic process constantly predicting and updating. Perception itself is a controlled hallucination constrained by sensory input. Reality is not passively received. It is actively constructed. The lab where scientists try to create a universe is an externalized version of this process. It is humanity testing its predictive models against the deepest structure of existence. And here is the most unexpected realization. The question is not whether we will create a new universe. The question is why we are compelled to try. Psychology suggests that curiosity is not optional. It is an evolutionary drive. Curiosity reduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is metabolically expensive for the brain. Exploring cosmic origins is the ultimate uncertainty reduction. By understanding how universes begin, we reduce existential anxiety. Even failure serves this purpose. It tells us where the edges are. So when you feel overwhelmed by this idea, when your mind resists it, remember that this resistance is your brain doing its job. It is protecting coherence. But beyond that initial resistance lies growth. The same neural mechanisms that allow you to adapt to stress allow humanity to adapt to new cosmic perspectives. In that sense, the lab is not just creating theoretical universes. It is reshaping the human mind. It teaches us that creation is not about control, but about understanding systems deeply enough to respect their complexity. It teaches us that limits are not enemies of progress, but the structure that makes progress possible. And it invites a final question, one that lingers long after the equations fade. If the universe itself can emerge from simple rules, what might emerge from the next expansion of human understanding? Think about that. Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more deep, science-driven explorations that connect the brain, the cosmos, and human curiosity, like this video, subscribe to MindSpark Science and stay curious.